The steel gates of Cedar Grove Correctional Facility echoed ominously as they swung shut, a finality that struck fear into the hearts of Jamal, Ruth, and Leo. Jamal, a young artist, felt the weight of guilt gnawing at his insides. His crime, a moment of passion, now defined him. Ruth, once a devoted teacher, recalled the scandal that shattered her life, leaving her feeling like a ghost among the living. Meanwhile, Leo, a seasoned inmate with a long history of mistakes, surveyed his surroundings with weary eyes, reflecting on the life he had led and the time he had lost. As they trudged along the cold concrete corridors, the sounds of rattling chains and the barks of guards blended into a cacophony of harsh reality. Each character's inner turmoil hummed beneath the surface, revealing their hopes and fears. Together, they faced an uncertain future within these grim walls, where redemption felt like a distant dream waiting to be grasped. The orientation process at Cedar Grove Correctional Facility is a stark awakening for Jamal, Ruth, and Leo. They stand in lines, eyes darting nervously as a stern warden lays down the rules, the air thick with tension. The guards, towering and intimidating, patrol the yard, their boots echoing against the concrete, a constant reminder of the power dynamics at play. Jamal watches others grapple with their new realities, the weight of their choices hanging heavily in the air. Ruth finds herself flinching at the harsh language exchanged between inmates, a stark contrast to her previous life of teaching. Leo, seasoned yet cautious, observes the hierarchy forming, recognizing the unspoken codes that govern survival within the walls. Through their thoughts, listeners can feel the uncertainty and fear, each character struggling to navigate the precarious landscape of their new environment, an uneasy balance between vulnerability and the instinct to protect themselves. Days turn into weeks, and the routine of prison life begins to engulf Jamal, Ruth, and Leo. Within the high concrete walls, time feels both stagnant and relentless. Jamal finds solace in art classes, where he colors his anguish into paint, transforming his cell into a canvas of hope. Each brushstroke becomes a form of therapy, a whisper of freedom amid confinement. Meanwhile, Ruth navigates her role as a mentor, recalling lessons from her teaching days, as she engages with fellow inmates on shared experiences of loss and longing. Leo, on the other hand, faces the gritty realities of prison culture, sharing stories of survival while trying to maintain his dignity. The sounds of metal trays clattering, echoes of laughter during mealtime, and whispered conversations fill the air, inviting listeners to experience the monotony punctuated by moments of connection, a lifeline within the oppressive walls of Cedar Grove. As the initial excitement of prison life subsides, the looming specter of isolation becomes a heavy burden for Jamal, Ruth, and Leo. Jamal grapples with depression, the weight of his crime pressing down on his chest like a vice. In the dim light of his cell, he stares at blank canvases, wrestling with the urge to create but feeling paralyzed by his guilt. Ruth, too, feels the sting of separation from her children, clutching letters that serve as both lifelines and reminders of her failures. She finds herself lost in memories, the laughter of her kids echoing in her mind, intensifying her solitude. Meanwhile, Leo, facing the emotional toll of a life sentence, struggles with memories of violence and loss, questioning whether he can guide others away from the very paths that led him here. In this stark reality, each inmate silently battles their demons, seeking solace in fleeting moments of connection amid the relentless isolation of Cedar Grove. As the days blend into weeks, the struggles of incarceration weigh heavily on Jamal, Ruth, and Leo. Jamal fights against the shadows of guilt that haunt him, his once vibrant spirit dimmed by the stigma of his crime. The art he once considered a refuge now feels like a reminder of his pain. Meanwhile, Ruth wrestles with the emotional distance separating her from her children. Each letter she writes is saturated with love and longing, yet she fears they'll never understand the choices that led to her imprisonment. Leo, carrying the burden of his past, faces pressure from fellow inmates, realizing that his desire to mentor the younger generation comes with its own risks. Tensions mount, manifesting in heated encounters that threaten to unravel the fragile connections they've built. In a place where survival demands courage and resilience, each inmate grapples with their demons, searching for a glimmer of hope amid the chaos. As days turned into weeks, Jamal began forging unexpected friendships through his art, bonding with fellow inmates who shared stories of hardship and hope. He discovered a supportive network among those who longed for self-expression, using canvas and color as a means of escape. Ruth, too, reached out, forming connections with other mothers in prison who understood her pain. Together, they shared laughter and tears, their book club blossoming into a sanctuary where stories bridged the gap between their pasts and their desires for the future. In the yard, Leo embraced his role as a mentor, guiding younger inmates through the treacherous landscape of prison life. As he shared his experiences, the sound of a basketball bouncing echoed against the cold concrete, symbolizing resilience and the shared humanity within these walls. These moments of connection illuminated the darkness, reminding each of them that amidst the bleakness of confinement, community could thrive. As tensions began to ease within the concrete confines of Cedar Grove, moments of joy materialized like flickers of light in the darkness. Jamal unveiled his first successful art project, a vibrant mural that resonated with hope, drawing admiration from fellow inmates. Laughter filled the air as Ruth's book club sparked engaging discussions, allowing women to share their stories and experiences, bridging the emotional distances that their sentences had imposed. Meanwhile, Leo organized a spirited basketball tournament, transforming the yard into a lively arena where rivalries faded, replaced by unity and camaraderie. The rhythmic bounce of the basketball and the sounds of cheering echoed against the prison walls, fostering a rare sense of belonging. For the first time in a long while, they felt the warmth of community, proving that even within the harshness of incarceration, moments of joy could thrive, fueling their journeys toward redemption and connection in an otherwise desolate landscape. An incident arises that strains the fragile bonds forged amid the concrete walls of Cedar Grove. In the dim light of the common area, a heated argument escalates, drawing in rival factions. Chaos erupts, fists fly, and guards rush in, enforcing a lockdown that resonates with an unsettling finality. Jamal, shaken, seeks solace in his now dimmed artistic dreams, grappling with guilt for not being able to intervene. Ruth clings to the letters she has written to her children, the ink a lifeline, while fear grips her heart as she realizes how easily hope can shatter in these surroundings. Leo stands at the edge of the fray, the weight of responsibility heavy on his shoulders. He is forced to confront the cycle of violence he has always known. As silence descends over the facility, the inmates each reflect on what was lost and the urgent need to reassess their paths forward, understanding that hope remains a fragile, flickering flame. Following the lockdown, a heavy silence blankets Cedar Grove as the inmates grapple with the aftermath of chaos. Jamal sits alone in his cell, the muted clinks of his art supplies providing a stark contrast to the turmoil outside. In his diary, he writes about the suffocating weight of guilt, realizing that his art has become more than just an escape. It's now a mirror reflecting his struggle for redemption. Across the yard, Ruth stares at a faded photograph of her children, tears glistening in her eyes as she pours her heart into a letter, seeking to bridge the growing chasm of distance between them. Meanwhile, Leo, reflecting on the violence that has surrounded him, contemplates his own fractured past. Each day spent in introspection brings them closer to understanding the importance of forgiveness and acceptance, even in the face of an uncertain future. Each protagonist begins to actively seek paths toward redemption, igniting a flicker of hope within the hardened walls of Cedar Grove. Jamal's art gains unexpected recognition, he channeling his anguish into vibrant pieces that express the turmoil of his past while resonating deeply with fellow inmates. As he prepares for an upcoming showcase, the prospect of sharing his story with the outside world weighs heavily on his heart. Meanwhile, Ruth finds herself pouring her emotions into heartfelt letters, attempting to reconnect with her children, desperately seeking their forgiveness and understanding. Her vulnerability becomes a lifeline, pulling her back from the depths of despair. Leo, reflecting on his role as a mentor, writes a letter of apology to a victim from his past, an act he feels may finally liberate him from the shackles of guilt. Together, these journeys reveal a shared longing for acceptance and healing, threading their hopes for redemption into an intricate tapestry of resilience. The anticipation surrounding the parole process intensifies, enveloping Jamal, Ruth, and Leo in a mix of hope and anxiety. Jamal, buoyed by the recent success of his art, receives an invitation to showcase his work at a state exhibit. It feels like a lifeline in the sea of confinement. He wrestles with the thought of stepping outside the prison walls, questioning whether he's truly ready to face the world. Meanwhile, Ruth prepares for a visit from her children after years of separation. Each letter she penned becomes a moment of reflection as she grapples with the guilt of her past and the longing for a future with them. Leo, too, stands on the precipice of change as he prepares for his parole hearing. The weight of their choices hangs heavily in the air, a silent testament to the journey they've all undertaken within Cedar Grove's unforgiving walls. As the day of reckoning approached, the weight of their choices hung heavy in the air. Jamal stood in front of a blank canvas, heart-pounding, contemplating whether to risk showcasing his art to the outside world, a leap that could either shatter the walls of his confinement or reinforce them. Ruth paced her cell, torn between the anticipation of seeing her children again and the fear of their judgment, grappling with the reality of being a stranger in their lives. Leo, on the cusp of his parole hearing, wrestled with the specter of his past decisions. He had the chance to walk free, but at the cost of facing the repercussions of his actions. Each inmate's decision felt monumental, echoing with the power to redefine not just their futures, but the very essence of their identities. Their hearts raced as they approached the inevitable, knowing that redemption often lay at the crossroads of choice and consequence. The day arrived, heavy with anticipation as Jamal's art exhibit loomed. Ruth prepared for her visit with her children, and Leo faced his parole hearing. The prison buzzed with a mixture of excitement and anxiety, each echoing footstep heightening their tension. Jamal stood in front of his artwork, heart racing, as strangers and fellow inmates alike scrutinized the pieces that embodied his pain and hope. He could feel their gazes dissecting his soul. Was he redeemable? Meanwhile, Ruth's heart fluttered at the thought of seeing her children after years apart. As they entered the visiting room, her eyes brimmed with tears, oscillating between joy and fear of rejection. Leo, sitting across from the panel for his hearing, felt the weight of judgment pressing down on him. As he spoke, he allowed vulnerability to flow through his words, bearing his regrets and aspirations. Each pivotal moment crystallized their fates, intertwining their paths in ways none could foresee.